It is a new season of Trap Chat. September is here, so the hiatus is over. And I know what you're thinking, Kirsten, you've been doing shows, but those have not been Trap Chat shows. Those have been Trap Chat Presents shows. So we're back with our regular format. And I'm so excited to be kicking off this season of Trap Chat with a phenomenon. Hey, I'm joined today.
Story to how I got that nickname.
Yes.
I did not think about that nickname, believe it or not.
All right, we'll have to get to that. I'm joined today by Ron Rapatalo. He is a father, husband, New York native, weird Yankees fan, whatever. Talent Shepard, business development leader, equity-centered career coach, podcaster, publisher, fitness coach, Harvard Business Review advisory board member, and just an awesome person that I have had the pleasure of connecting with a few times. I've never met in person yet, but he's just an awesome guy, and I'm excited to talk to him and for all of us to learn more about him and his story. Hey, Ron.
Hey,
welcome.
Kirsten. Appreciate you reaching out. It's all funny how messaging folks that we've not yet met turns into, hey, Ron, I'd love to have you as a podcast guest. And admittedly, I don't say I like being a podcast guest, more so than hosting at times. Because then I just show up and talk. You mean I don't have to
do any of the preparation or anything, just show up and talk. I love it. Yeah. I love it. So as we do on every show, please share your career journey that includes your roles such as, like I said, talent shepherd, business development leader, equity-centered career coach, and author, just to name a few.
Thank you, Kirsten. Yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't start with what I call my Marvel quasi-superhero origin story. I'm the youngest of 7, born in East Flatbush, Brooklyn, child of Filipino immigrants, the only one who was born in America. And so I provide that context because me being the only one born in America and how my parents came to America is part of the 4th, 5th generation of Filipinos coming. My dad was a professional with a college degree. You understand anything about immigration patterns. Many immigration patterns of bringing people to America who were immigrants came from bringing professionals who could bring their expertise and skills to America. So my dad had an accounting degree. He came to America on that basis, positioned my mom, the other 6, to come. And they came months before martial law got instituted. And we lived in a part of Brooklyn that I think, was beautiful in terms of the diversity of the people, right? And was also varying levels of on the come up and the struggle, as I like to say, right? So I paint that picture because I think that's the kind of context of how I came to be, right? And then where that led my career journey. And so highlights of, how I came to my career was being, a product of New York City public schools, being tagged as gifted and talented from 4th grade through 8th grade, right? Which led then me to, we didn't have money for test prep. I took the specialized high school exam and got into Stuyvesant High School. Stuyvesant High School created a trajectory to get into New York University. Like every good Filipino was destined for a professional career, quote unquote. I put professional in quotes because professional career is often the things I think many immigrants think of. It's like engineer, lawyer, doctor. Those are the big 3. Maybe business, right? That's a 4th, finance, right? So there's 4. I was a neuroscience major and a math major in college, decided not to pursue medical school. And therefore, that started my career journey. I had to give that background because starting you started working at NYU. What's the context of that? My first job out of college was working at the same job I was a student worker at.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's what I call didn't really want to grow up, but I had a safety job that was on campus that became a full-time job.
Nice.
Right. And that's a privilege, to be clear. The job, even in 1997, right? That job led into being curious about what else is out there, because that wasn't my forever job, right? It was what else is out there? And my sister worked at Morgan Stanley, ended up doing finance, so a little bit of a sector pivot, right, to work at Morgan Stanley in finance. Did that for 3 years. Wasn't a love by any stretch of the imagination. It was just a place that did some good work, met some good people. And so I had what I would consider my quarter life crisis, where I decided to work somewhere that was more values aligned and mission aligned, and always knew about Teach for America, didn't teach through the core,
it started working there at the national office, and in 2000, summer 2003 has become a 20-year career journey, right, after working to other sectors, higher ed and finance, of being in and around the K-12 education space. And so Teach for America led to 7 years working at a place called New Leaders, where I was promoted 4 times, did a lot of learning what hiring could look like
Yeah.
within a programmatic aspect for aspiring principals. And so got to meet a lot of the amazing instructional leaders that I have gotten to build relationships with through New Leaders and also Teach for America. The New Leaders job turned into working in a school district. So when Tammy Anderson was the superintendent there, and there was the Facebook money that was announced, the $100 million gift over 5 years, I was part of that consulting money that was brought in, then became a employee. Decided to strike it on my own. And so in 2014, I started my LLC, which then my wife is also involved in. So started doing search through that, and then went in-house to another consulting firm in late 2018, September 2018, and then was there for 5 years before I then went to another consulting firm where I did business development full time at Sherwin Consulting. So that's career journey, but there's a lot of other stuff. So
there's a lot of stuff in between, and I think we're going to touch on a few of those highlights as we talk. So I do want to go back to the beginning because, like you mentioned, you are the child of Philippine immigrants. How do you integrate the values of kapwa? I hope I said that right. And bayanihan. Oh, I did my best.
Bayanihan. It's okay.
Bayanihan. Dang. Okay, let's start over. Yeah. How do you integrate the values of kapwa and bayanihan?
Yeah.
Okay. Better. That you learned from your upbringing into your work.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I didn't learn those terms until probably much later in adult life. I would probably say 30s or 40s, right? It's not something I remember hearing. I certainly experienced it, right? And so I think if folks in the audience have a Filipino friend and they've gone to a Philippine family function, right? I think those two concepts really live, right? Because I think bayanihan is the spirit of like community taking care of itself, right? Bayan is town, and it's like town spirit. I think it's kind of my loose translation of bayanihan, right? Okay. Your community takes care of you. So one of the ways I like to describe bayanihan is if you're struggling or something, great has happened in your life, the town celebrates it and supports you. People look out for each other, right? And so I think that became something around like how I built my network and how I spend time with people, creating different like groups and entities over since high school even, right? Because I've just always loved how much, when they say it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to raise a leader, it takes a village. It just, you can't do things on your own. Right? The kapwa is this spiritual Philippine concept, which I think is across a lot of cultures, right? It loosely translated shared unity. My fate is your fate. And so this idea that even though if Kirsten, you and I are not related, our fates are tied to each other. And understanding that and then actualizing it then becomes another thing, right? And so kapwa for me meant that, if we were meeting people in the street, at the hospital, in the grocery line, on the subway, right? You were kind to people, right? Because we were connected, even if you didn't know the person or some people rub you the wrong way, right? This idea of kapwa is really looking out for each other because you understand that we are tied to each other, even if we don't have blood ties. Something like deeply like ingrained, which I think is enduring. If you look at any like major religion, kapwa comes up with some concept, right?
Yeah.
It's not uniquely Filipino, but the term, right? Yeah. Like I can feel it when I experience it. And so, my family just not only looked out for people, but I think there was the sense of like, other families connected to each other. And I think growing up the way I did in Brooklyn and Queens, especially in very multiracial environments, the idea of kapwa, I think, is how I lived. That because of it, right? Because I lived amongst so many different people, have opportunities to be in lots of environments of meeting people of all walks of life and races and identities. It's one of the ways I think you live kapwa, right? Is that it's hard to imagine having shared unity if you don't have kinship with someone and like have proximity. It's not something you could just theorize and intellectualize, right? And so that's how it's showing up for me.
So I think that's where, you get things that you talk about, like social impact hiring and equity-centered career coaching and things like that. I can definitely see those values, in that work that you do. That's awesome. I'm going to pivot just a little bit because I want to stay there with your work. In your book, Leverage, which we are going to talk about here, and we're going to give people an opportunity to get a copy of it. We'll tell you more about that later in the show. Yeah. But in your book, Leverage, you emphasize the importance of building a circle of champions. So we're talking about that community.
Yeah.
And you say you should do that rather than rely on those traditional networking methods. So, when we think networking, we're talking about, hey, we go stand in a room or in a bar or in a conference, and we hold a drink, pass up. Oh, no one passes out cards anymore. Take our phone and QR code everyone, or we go on LinkedIn and we're like, hey, I'm at a networking event. So what are some of the ways that professionals can recognize and cultivate these essential relationships to elevate their careers?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I think one of the reasons that I wrote the book is that it's not as if from birth, high school or college, or even early in my career that I even thought of this, right? I think I just relied on, I knew how to build relationships with people well because I was in a lot of different environments, built a lot of cultural competency. And I also saw the example of my parents and lots of other amazing people in my life, right? And so it became a little bit of like, wait, there are all these people that have influenced me in my life that I've relied on, as whether it's mentorship, advice, getting social capital from, financial capital, etc. Right. And so for me, it was about taking the lessons that I learned over time and the stories of people and saying, wait a second, I kind of always had a circle of champions over the last 20 years. I just didn't, honest to God, until I wrote the book, I wasn't super conscious of it per se. It's not like I have this board of advisors that I'm just talking about. It's like, I just had people I relied upon, right? And so when I think of a circle, right, you think of the circle shape, right? Because you're 60 degrees, tight knit. These are people that this is your ride or die.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And the title of my book, I think, connotates how I've always felt spiritually about networking, right? It's leverage the people who love and care about you personally and professionally.
Yeah.
The love and care is deeply important here. Like circle of champions, these are people who love and care about you. And they can come from all different walks of life. They could be mentors from work. They could be family. They could be, coaches. It's just how these people come up is not really the notion. It's more, are you having these different people that are pushing and complementary to how you think? That's really the key of the circle of champions, right? I came up with these archetypes of people that supported me through my career and life journey that was important around complementing who I am as a person, as a leader. So someone like the no nonsense nurturer, right? Or the empathetic teacher, or the personal guru, right? It's my wife, right? There are people that having in your circle matter to give you a different lens and piece of advice because they see the world differently. That's really the key of the circle of champions. It's not like 7 people who are like Ron.
Yeah.
That's less valuable, right? I think it takes some level of pushing and self-awareness and growth, and your circle of champions changes over time. It doesn't have to be the same people. And in fact, not every archetype you might arguably need at that point in your life and career. But so some of it is an iterative approach of you take what you need based on where you are.
Okay.
You're around. Which I think for me as a concept is always beautiful, right? Because it's not as formulaic. You must have these people. It's some options.
Okay.
Right.
Give you some options.
Yeah.
Speaking of options, so I mentioned early in the show that this month I've been doing a series to help job seekers utilize AI tools to enhance their job search. And the way that you and I reconnected was a conversation about AI. So, you founded Leverage Publishing Group, obviously your book is Leverage, and you founded Leverage Publishing Group, where you help first-time nonfiction authors of color publish their works without the use of AI. So as AI adoption and AI generated content continues to grow, what would you say are the key benefits of relying on the human created impact driven content and storytelling that does amplify those underrepresented voices?
Right. Some of it is understanding how AI is built, right? AI is a tool that is built to do a certain amount of has a database of learning and things and facts or whatever, right? And over times, like might have some self-replicating loop where it's also doing learning, right, to get better. When I think about the example I can always think about that's really powerful, it's in the world of chess, right? And so IBM built I guess it was an AI like chess tool that beat the best grandmaster in chess, Gary Kasparov, 20 years ago. You can look this up, right? And so there certainly are moments where, like, yes, AI at some level can surpass some portion of like human thinking and cognition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is my riff on like the difference between AI and like human created content is like, until I hear or see in the research otherwise, there's something about the creativity of how our brain is constructed. And let's be clear, as a former neuroscience major, we still are building our understanding of how the brain works. It's not as if we don't 100% understand it. When I was studying it in the 90s, like at 10%, it might be at 15 or 20. It's an emerging field. And so I think my point is, right, there's something about how we define creativity that I often wonder, can that be approximated in some tool? Now, there are portions of it for sure, right, in terms of aggregating things and, being able to summarize that. That's how I use AI, right? But if you want a particular voice or something that comes off as you and unique to you, I would argue, like, could Bell Hooks be someone whose writing be done via AI? I know, but probably she's so unique as a writer. So is Toni Morrison, this is James Baldwin, right? And over time, as this machine learning, these things get smarter and built, hopefully more so by people who look like you and I think that's where the hook is going to be. I think my trepidation on any of these kinds of like tools is who's building it and what's the data set and how is it constructed, right? Because then you'll learn a lot about like, then what does it spit out? And I went to a session that really like blew my mind at the National Charter School Conference where a neuroscientist who knows a ton about AI gave a keynote speech about like AI and K-12 education learning have distinct parallels where about the well sought out answer. So there's some data, there's a right answer. There's so many things we're solving. When you're doing creative work, there's no right answer.
Right.
When you're solving for things like a cure for some incurable disease, there's no direct right answer. I think for the foreseeable future, AI can be tools to help shape those things, but you still need some level of human creativity and ingenuity to be able to get something creative out there, right? And I think the reason why we particularly market towards human-centered created only is to riff on, we want folks who want to buy into, there are people that are doing this with you, not a tool that is going to spit out your content or take the content we get from you and like spit it out for you. That's just, I'm not saying that couldn't be an approach and it couldn't be valid. I just think in the marketplace, right, we want people like, you're working with people and people will get you to your to better content.
Yeah, I agree. And I love you keep iterating that it is a tool. It is a tool. It is a tool. And I think too many of us are using it as it is the answer. It is it is the thing,
Yeah, think about how people reacted like back in the day. Like, wait a second, how do you build a single cell inside of Excel or Google Sheets? You think about the complexity for a single cell to be coded. That's work. I know folks who go, that's a lot. Like, and then you have these expansive systems, right? You have memory chips that like every there's some like law about like, these memory chips can hold the same amount of like double the amount of memory in like every 3 years. That's kind of the way that memory gets. So something like an iPhone like this.
Yeah.
This is not reasonable 20 years ago. Something like this was probably the size of my bigger laptops 20 years ago. Right. And so technology for me is always something to be embraced and understood, but is a tool and something that could supplement our humanity rather than, I think this is where people have a lot of pushback, replace our humanity. That's where I get scared. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, oh, wait a second. Like, let's go use genetics to like create like humans. Like, no, people have like, and I think because this is such an emerging like field right now, right? And there's a lot of money and attention, people like the law and policies are catching up with all the speculation.
All right. All right. I love that. So I think we're going to come to our last question in this section before we jump to my favorite part, the rapid fire. Um,
Right.
but you also have a podcast. I love whenever I have podcast
Yeah.
hosts come on and talk to me. So, what inspired you to start Ronderings? And Ronderings, for anyone who doesn't know, it explores a range of topics from career advice to leadership and wellness. We will again put a link so that you can check out some of the episodes.
Yeah.
So, tell us what inspired you.
Like a lot of things in my life, so no one sees the full 49 years. I'd been thinking about having a podcast for at least a decade. So I move slow, right? You get to see the top, like, oh, I'm finally doing one in the last like 18 months. But I loved being on podcasts. And one of the things I realized, like, wait a second, wouldn't it be cool if I was on the other side? Because I got constant feedback like, oh, you're such a good guest. You're like, just, you know, I'm your like extrovert. Like I enjoy this, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
when I thought about the kinds of conversations I like having, right? So when I think about a Rondering episode, it's being able to have a great conversation that's not recorded with one of the many people that I know and just record it with some structure.
Okay.
So the structure is I created Ronderings to have a little bit of like my skill set of improv and listening, being able to riff while still having enough data and conversation to be able to kind of feed my curiosity to ask more questions of the guests and go deeper, right? And so I start out with what's your story? I think oftentimes we don't talk about our story, right? And I think the reason why I interpreted your career journey story as a story is because I don't like to just talk about career because it's just a fact
Yeah.
that people's story is so much deeper than their career journey.
Yeah.
Whenever a career journey, I'm going to tell my story by default, right? Because that's how I want to share it because you don't get the full context of my career journey without getting all the stuff around before I started my first job out of college.
Right.
And so I want to hear that because how people share their story in a lot of ways. It's, if I go into End of Hamilton the musical, who lives, who dies, who tells your story, why are we waiting around until we die to tell our story? Why not tell our stories as we're living? I mean, that's the point of the music. I swear, like when I watched, I was like, holy crap, that's the point.
You're a Hamilton fan?
Kind of
Okay.
semi-obsessively, like we watched it. I mean, we finally watched it live 2 summers ago. And then on Disney Plus, I don't know, we've watched it 600 times. I mean, my daughter can sing Satisfied. And it's like the cutest thing ever watching my 2 daughters sing Satisfied. It's
Okay.
adorable thing.
You have to get them on Ronderings singing.
Oh, my future episode. Uh-oh.
There you go.
Interview my 2 Rugrats.
Yes.
And then, after riffing and kind of hearing people's story and getting curious and also knowing a little bit about the vast majority of my guests, to be able to ask questions that are sometimes out of the flow of the conversation, I end the podcast with, what is your Rondering? So wondering with a W, Rondering. What is the story? What's the lesson or value you want to share with the audience?
Nice.
So I started Ronderings, the hashtag, as a New Year's resolution in 2018 for me to share content on Facebook and LinkedIn, to write daily.
Nice.
A friend of mine, Ron Williams, shout him out, my homeboy from Stuyvesant, brilliant dude, right?
Okay.
Who said, Ron, you don't have to blog. Because I was like, I have to write a lot. I'm like, well, how am I going to get out there and kind of share my thing? He's like, there's the idea of microblogging, which in our world is you go on LinkedIn, you go on Facebook, you write something a little bit longer than a tweet or something that on Threads. I don't use X that frequently, right?
Okay.
It's probably a little bit long. This idea of mini blogging really resonated with me. It's like, I have these short bursts of thoughts I want to share. They're not fully concocted stories, big blogs, but like I have thinking that I wanted to share. And so the Rondering became like this observations of the world and life and career and me and people, and became, I want to see how people think about their own Ronderings. And so for me, it's a natural curiosity of the incredible people I have in my life in all these different circles between New York University, education leaders of color, new leaders, Teach for America, and different groups I'm involved in and walks of life. And I'm just like, I just want to put incredible people on to share their story because I don't think we, as the global majority, share our stories enough.
So it came out of this one of like, I'm sick and tired of like not having our stories uplifted and shared, because they're such incredible things to learn from for people, that I wanted to share that brilliance with other people, of the brilliant people that I know.
I love that. And I love that you came here and shared your story with us. Just a small piece. You guys still got to go and check Ron out everywhere. Tell folks where to find you.
Oh boy, LinkedIn is probably the easiest place to find me. There's only one Ron Rapatalo on LinkedIn, I believe. So you type in my name, connect, follow. I'm still under 30,000 people, so I accept connection requests as long as you're not trying to sell me something.
Yes. Okay.
I'm also on Instagram, Phenomeron.
Yeah.
Also on Facebook, Ron Rapatalo. I have my podcast and other things, but I'll let you ask that. I can.
Yeah. We'll add that stuff later on. All right. So rapid fire, because I know you have a hard stop and we have to get out of here.
Roll the dice. Here we go.
Who's a well-known and or lesser-known historical or contemporary figure who inspires you and we should learn more about?
I'm going to give to my parents.
Oh.
I love it. Yeah. I'm going to try not to cry. Because I think the people who raised me to be who I am, their stories are so fascinating. Like I just, and in my book Leverage, I talk a little bit about that. They're not folks. I think my dad, if I were to like have categorized him in the book, as the empathetic teacher. My mom was the no nonsense nurture, was probably more of like being a bit more directed than no nonsense nurturer. But like, their stories for me are just so a part of like how I see the world, that sharing who they are, I think is really important. And I've done that. Like when my mom passed away, I did this, I did 7 blog posts. I called it Mom, Memories of Minerva. My mom's first name's Minerva. And so I shared that, all these stories about mom, right? Because my dad passed when I was 10, right? So there's just things about like giving snippets of those stories. Like I have found, this is going to sound like Tony Robbins, you can't be the first one, but like you find out a lot about a person based on the people that raised that person. Like a lot. And one of the things I've learned in leadership is that when you have the gift of learning that from someone, because it's a gift. Now, people are not required to share anything with you personally.
Right.
In a space where people start talking about that, you learn an awful lot about why people lead the way that they do, or don't lead the way they do. A lot. It's fascinating.
This almost feels like a insignificant question now, but
okay.
I mean, like the next one I'm going to ask, not that one. What fictional character gives you a glimpse of yourself?
That's a good question. I don't know why I thought this, right? This is not this when I mean glimpse, like it's part of me, not all of me, right? So when 24 was out in its heyday on Fox, I gave myself, so when we talk about, my hashtag, my nickname Phenomeron, my homegirl Amaloha gave me that nickname 20 years ago. It was kind of like, to like a little bit of like tease me, but also like, you're the Phenomenon, you're amazing. I mean, she also, from that lens. So Jack Bauer, the fictional character on 24, who makes the world, like saves the world every episode, I often have, when you get a glimpse of me, there's a certain level of like urgency that he operates under, and then this ability to be able to shape shift on the circumstance. He's like can be incredibly like empathetic and loving one moment, and then having to like be badass and save the world in another moment, right? And so for me, that gives a glimpse of how, not exactly like, because I don't kill people, that's different. I don't do that, right? Right, but there's a level of like having to, using my Brooklyn GSD, get shit done, and then also incredibly empathetic, that I think gives me a glimpse of me.
Jack Bauer, Phenomenon, same thing. Okay, all right. Yeah. What is your favorite empowering quote?
This is a quote that I've started using when I first thought of this question. It's like, do I have any quotes I really think about? I'm like, oh, they're long quotes. Right?
You may not.
Yeah. There's a James Baldwin quote that I can't remember. You can ask me offline, that I've often used. It's probably what that empowering quote is, right?
Okay.
But the quote that I like to use around relationships is trust first, transaction second.
Trust first, transaction second. I like that.
It's the opposite of networking. We're taught transaction first, trust second. Swipe
Mm-hmm.
second.
Gotcha.
No.
So, again, this probably isn't a fair question for you because you have about 7,000 different professions. But if you could choose, if you could spend a day shadowing someone in a different one than, again, the number of professions that you have, who would it be? And what would you hope to learn from them?
Yeah. Yeah. I've always been curious about what former President Obama does in his life, right? Because he seems, right? And I think of an archetype of someone who like absolutely fascinates me. Like you seem to do it all, literally all. You know, I'm a sports nut. He can talk about sports as deeply as he can about like I can't talk about foreign affairs. It's not that brilliant, right? But there's something about like, how do you manage all of these things in your life? And add value and still be there for people and balance that with like his love for his brilliant wife and the brilliant Michelle Obama and his girls, right? How do you, I don't want to say, I'd never think that someone has it all and does it all the time and they're perfect. It's not true, right? But like, what I would love to learn from him is how did you hold that weight being the first Black president of the United States and now post that president life? How do you juggle? How are you resting? How are you taking care of you? What do you see the world? Right? Because that for me is like getting insight from someone who's been in many a room that I've not yet been in and how he's experienced. It's just when you get a lens, like I don't swim in those rooms, and I think I'm relatively quote unquote accomplished, depending on your those things, right?
Yeah, absolutely are.
And there's levels to these things, right? And so for me, I'm always like when someone is like that, oh, you're like talking to Oprah. Let me follow Oprah around for a day. It just would be real, like, so, like, because I have this aspiring.
I think you want to move to Hawaii. I'm hearing a lot of Hawaiian influence. Oprah has the Hawaiian house that she likes to hang out in. Obama's from Hawaii. I feel like you kind of just want to go live on the islands.
Pretty close, yeah. The missus and I had a vacation to Costa Rica a decade plus ago. That's where you want to retire.
That's where you want to retire?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, just a few more. I just read this as go-go. But what's your go-to songs or music genre when you want to hype yourself up for the day?
Yeah. I got a ton. So this is like you're asking a Filipino who loves karaoke and then has a crazy playlist that's relatively eclectic.
Okay.
I'll name a couple, right?
Okay.
Annie Up, MOP.
Scenario
Tribe Called Quest.
Oh.
Living on a Prayer, Bon Jovi.
Yes.
Oh my God. Lots of J. Kind of depends. Okay. System of a Down, right? Some of their music.
That's one song I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a group I don't know.
There's a particular Chop Suey because it's the hard beat. Some of this go-to music that I like is not even about the lyrics in the song. It's the beat. Is it driving? Is it going to get me like Annie Up? I mean,
yes.
Come on, that's when I had one of my first weightlifting competitions. That was my entrance music.
Entrance song. I love it. I love that.
Yeah.
All right. What's the best piece of career advice you received that you would give to your early career self?
Learning how to advocate for your needs and resources you need and where you want to go. I think a lot of it, like early Ron Rapatalo, right? And I still struggle with this. This to be clear, like I've gotten better, but early Ron Rapatalo, the messages I got was, if I work hard, this is going to sound very typical across a lot of folks of the global majority, right? I've seen these patterns. If you work hard, you'll get noticed, you'll be elevated and promoted. We've never lived in meritocracy, right? And so it is not a bad thing to advocate and tell your story and showcase yourself. And yet so many of us are told if you do that, that's selfish. That means you're bigger than the work. It's just that those things are, you can live a world where you can live multiple truths here. You can still be down for the cause and the mission, whatever it is you're doing, still talk about yourself in an authentic way.
Yeah.
How you value yourself. You know what I'm saying? And so I wish I'd have done that earlier because I had a lot of early discipline, like, why am I being overlooked? And I was just, I had to put the mirror on me, and that was really hard. It's hard to be like, damn, wait, I could have done more to advocate for myself because I just didn't feel the courage to. I didn't ask. It sucks when I look and it's like, oh, damn, that's a lot of it. I'm not saying there aren't systemic forces and some BS around things work. That also lives to be true. But we can control how we advocate for ourselves. We can.
Advocate for yourself. I love that. Is excellent advice, not just for an early career self, but for a current career self as well. Advocate for yourself. Yeah. All right. So we know that it is the end of Q3. We're about to hop into Q4. The year is about to be over. So what are you most looking forward to? Whether it's a personal goal, project, or initiative, professional milestone, exciting opportunity, please share what you're most looking forward to as the year ends.
Yeah, I was thinking about this because there's so many, like, I don't want to give my work answer, like hitting my work goals, right? I have a work goal, which is exciting, right?
That's exciting.
Get, between $800,000 to $1 million of revenue by the end of the year.
Right? Yay!
So there's that. But I think I'd be remiss if I didn't, in this current economy and climate, right? It's hard out there. Myself included, it's just not easy, right? It doesn't mean that like I'm underwater, but like it's hard. And so for me, like when I think personal goal, it's like a bit more like stability right now.
Okay.
My life and career. It's not like but it's a feeling, right? Because there's just so much around and it's just slower in my industry. Just is.
I love it.
If I don't name it, I'd be lying to you. And I don't want to lie.
No, I don't see you lying. I love that. You're looking forward to things slowing down, leveling out. I love that. This has been a wonderful conversation for me. I enjoyed learning more about you. I hope everyone else out there did as well. Great way to kick off the new season of Trap Chat. A few more things to mention. Ron, you had something coming up that you wanted to shout out.
Yes. I am a proud board member of Brooklyn Laboratory Charter School. We are celebrating our 10th anniversary gala on October 23rd. So I'll make sure I share the link so that your guests can see it.
Yes.
There are different ways to get involved. It's not only buying a ticket, not only corporate sponsorships or silent auction items. It's also if you just want to donate, like you can do. I've had a couple of people donate, just the kindness of their hearts, right? But the big thing I want to say, I think it's okay for me because we've said over here. We don't have the public announcement yet, but we Megan Good is going to host our reception, which is very
nice, very nice.
So there'll be more on that, like something more public about it. But we're really excited about that because I think, I think it's a testament to the incredible work that the leadership of the school does, the support from our board, to be able to have that kind of attention. I do not take those things for granted, right?
Awesome.
So that's pretty cool.
That is cool. And again, make sure that you come and, check the comments because we are going to be giving away a copy of Leverage. Thank you, Ron. We are also, make sure that you follow Ron, Rapatalo.
Yes.
LinkedIn. Go to @Phenom. So like Phenom, like you would spell phenomenal, and then Phenomeron. So Phenom, ERON. If you want to check out his Instagram, make sure you also check out Rondering's podcast. And all of that information, again, can be found on Ron's LinkedIn. We'll also add it to the comment section. And we'll look forward to you guys joining us again for another episode of Trap Chat. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Kirsten. Thanks, everyone. Bye.